Christmas is a time filled with joy, warmth, and celebration. But have you ever wondered about the hidden stories beneath the glittering surface of the holiday? As the lights twinkle and the air fills with the scent of pine and cinnamon, the magic of the season wraps itself around us, drawing us into a festive spirit. Yet, behind the familiar image of Santa Claus, stockings by the fireplace, and exchange of gifts, there exists a deeper, more mysterious layer. This is a layer steeped in ancient myths, forgotten traditions, and stories that have traveled through centuries, evolving and intertwining to create the Christmas we know today. It's fascinating to consider how Christmas, as we celebrate it now, didn't always look the way it does. The modern version of the holiday, which has become synonymous with family gatherings, sparkling lights, and gift-giving, actually has roots that stretch back to much older times, to celebrations that were focused on something very different: the changing of the seasons, particularly the winter solstice. For centuries, people across Europe, the Middle East, and beyond have marked the arrival of the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. In those ancient days, the solstice was a moment of great significance, as it represented a return of light after the darkness of winter had enveloped the land. This time of year, which was often marked by festivals, feasts, and rituals, was a time of hope, renewal, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Long before Christmas became associated with religious and commercial celebrations, the solstice was a time of reckoning with the harshness of winter. In Northern Europe, the Norse people celebrated Yule, a festival honoring the sun's return. The Yule log, an enormous log that would burn in the hearth for days, was seen as a symbol of warmth, life, and endurance of the earth at the coldest, darkest time of the year. There was a deep reverence for the changing seasons, for the cycle of life, death, and rebirth that was mirrored in nature's rhythms. The Yule log and other winter traditions, such as feasts, merrymaking, and gatherings, were meant to hold back the darkness, to ensure that the light would return and that the days would grow longer, brighter, and warmer. In these ancient times, the stories and symbols of winter were filled with both wonder and fear. The cold was both a gift and a curse. While it promised a new beginning, it also tested the resilience of those who lived in northern climates. For many early cultures, winter was a time when spirits roamed the earth, and the boundary between the living and the dead seemed thinner. Myths of winter gods, demons, and creatures would rise from the depths of these traditions, each telling a story of survival, of the balance between light and dark, good and evil. These figures, often darker than the modern Christmas figures, embodied both the dangers and the magic of the season. It's in this rich, complex tapestry of myths that the stories of figures like St. Nicholas, Krampus, and Father Frost are born. These characters, who now play central roles in our Christmas celebrations, have evolved through centuries of cultural exchange, shaping and being shaped by the myths of different peoples. From the east to the west, from ancient pagan rites to Christian symbolism, the figures that we now recognize as part of the Christmas holiday were once part of a much larger, much older web of stories. Consider the figure of St. Nicholas, a man whose legend would come to represent the spirit of Christmas generosity. But before he became the jolly figure of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas was a real person, a bishop in the 4th century, known for his kindness and charitable acts. Born in what is now Turkey, he was said to perform miracles, including saving sailors from a deadly storm and providing dowries for poor girls to avoid being sold into slavery. Over time, his story spread across Europe, morphing into the legend of Santa Claus, a figure who would bring gifts to children on Christmas Eve. However, the transition from a real-life figure to a mythical one was far from simple. It involved the blending of many different cultural traditions, some of which were rooted in ancient winter solstice rituals, and others that were shaped by Christian values of charity and giving. But Street Nicholas is just one part of a much larger and more complex holiday narrative. In many parts of Europe, the figure of St. Nicholas was accompanied by other figures, each of whom played a different role in the holiday celebrations. In the Alpine regions of Europe, for example, there was a figure of Krampus, a dark and fearsome creature who was said to punish naughty children during the Christmas season. While Street Nicholas would reward the good with gifts, Krampus would appear to deliver a much different form of retribution, one that involved dark and unsettling imagery. These two figures, the benevolent gift-giver and the terrifying punisher, stood in stark contrast to one another, creating a balance of sorts within the holiday mythology. The interplay between these two figures is a fascinating aspect of Christmas legends, revealing how joy and fear, goodness and punishment, can exist side by side in the collective imagination. The story of Father Frost, or Dead Moros, is another intriguing aspect of the holiday mythos. In Russia, this figure is often seen as the embodiment of winter itself, a spirit who brings both the cold and the festive spirit of the season. Father Frost is typically portrayed as a kind, grandfatherly figure who, like Santa Claus, delivers gifts to children. Yet, like many of the myths that we associate with Christmas, his story is steeped in ancient traditions that predate the holiday itself. In many ways, Father Frost is a symbol of the harsh beauty of winter, a reminder that, although the season can be cold and unforgiving, also carries with it the possibility of magic and wonder. These myths, which span different cultures and centuries, are more than just stories. They are reflections of human experience, shaped by the challenges and joys that accompany the changing seasons. Christmas, in its many forms, is a celebration of light returning after darkness, of hope in the face of winter's chill, and an enduring spirit of generosity and kindness that binds people together during the coldest months of the year. As we unwrap gifts and share meals with loved ones, we are also participating in a much older tradition, one that is intertwined with the ancient rhythms of the earth and the myths that have shaped our understanding of this magical time of year. As the night deepens and the world around us grows quieter, the stories of Christmas begin to take on a new dimension. They become more than just tales of gift-giving and merrymaking. They transform into stories that connect us to something greater, something eternal, something that transcends time and culture. When we listen to these myths, we are not just hearing stories about Christmas. We are hearing echoes of ancient voices that still speak to us, calling us to pause and reflect on the deeper meanings of the season. And as we drift off to sleep, we carry these stories with us, holding on to the warmth and wonder they bring long after the lights have dimmed and the last gift has been opened. The origins of Christmas myths are far more ancient than the commercialized holiday we know today, deeply rooted in human history and the cycles of nature. Long before Christmas was celebrated as the birth of Jesus Christ or transformed into a global festivity with shopping and decorations, people marked this time of year with other traditions, many of which are now woven into the fabric of modern-day Christmas. But in the beginning, these early traditions were not about a religious holiday or gift-giving. They were about survival and the connection between human beings and the natural world. At the core of many ancient winter festivals was the winter solstice, a moment that has held immense significance for cultures throughout history. The winter solstice, the longest night of the year, marks the turning point when the sun begins its slow return. For millennia, societies have understood the power of the solstice as a cosmic event that symbolized the triumph of light over darkness. It was a time of hope, renewal, and rebirth. The darkness of winter was not only a physical challenge, making it harder to grow food or navigate the bitter cold, but also represented a psychological test of endurance, patience, and resilience. How would humanity survive the darkness and cold, waiting for the warmth of spring to return? These celebrations of the solstice were not just about fighting against the cold, but they were also deeply spiritual. The turning of the year brought with it the promise of a new beginning, a time for new growth and a fresh start. Rituals, feasts, dances, and sacrifices were held to honor the gods and spirits believed to control the seasons. People believed that these rituals would help bring warmth back to the earth and ensure a successful harvest in the coming year. The winter solstice festivals, celebrated in different parts of the world, all had one thing in common. They were rooted in the connection between human beings and the cycles of nature, the interplay between light and dark, life and death, hope and despair. In the northern regions of Europe, particularly among the Norse people, the solstice was marked by the celebration of Yule. Yule was not just a day of celebration, but an entire season, lasting from the solstice into the early days of the new year. It was a festival that celebrated the return of the sun, the source of all life. During Yule, people would light bonfires, sing song, and tell stories, all aimed at honoring the sun and its power. The Yule log, often an entire tree, was a central part of the festivities. Families would select the largest log they could find, carefully place on the fire, and keep it burning throughout the night. The fire symbolized the sun's return, and the warmth it provided was seen as a sign that life would continue, that the earth would eventually thaw, and that the cycle of life would continue again. The ashes from Yule log were often kept and used for protection or good luck in the coming year. Alongside these celebrations of the sun, there were other elements of folklore that became associated with the winter season. In many cultures, this time of year was seen as a period when the boundaries between the living and the dead grew thin, when spirits and supernatural beings were said to walk the earth. For the Norse, this was embodied by the Wild Hunt, a ghostly procession led by the god Odin, who was said to ride to the night skies with a host of spirits and supernatural beings. The Wild Hunt was both a source of terror and fascination for the people, as it was believed that those who witnessed the hunt might be swept away by the spirits or that misfortune would follow. The Norse gods themselves were tied to the rhythms of nature, with Odin representing both wisdom and the harsh, unpredictable forces of winter. The Wild Hunt served as a reminder of the fragility of life and the presence of unseen forces during the darkest time of the year. As Christianity spread across Europe, it began to overlay its own beliefs and practices onto these ancient traditions. The winter solstice, with its themes of light and rebirth, was a natural fit for the Christian celebration of Christ's birth. In the 4th century, the Church officially adopted December 25th as the day to celebrate the birth of Jesus, aligning it with the already existing solstice festivals. This was not merely a coincidence, but a strategic move to make Christianity more palatable to people who were already accustomed to celebrating the return of light at this time of year. The message of hope and salvation found in the story of Jesus' birth mirrored the hope that people felt as the days began to lengthen once again. But while Christianity embraced the symbolism of the solstice, it also began to incorporate elements of the older pagan traditions. This is where figures like St. Nicholas began to enter the scene. St. Nicholas was a real person, a Christian bishop who lived in the 4th century in the city of Myra, in present-day Turkey. His life was marked by acts of charity, kindness, and miraculous deeds. The most famous story of St. Nicholas involves him secretly providing dowries for 3 poor girls, thus saving them from being sold into slavery. This act of kindness and generosity became one of the central features of his legacy, and over time, his story began to merge with older folk traditions. St. Nicholas, a symbol of generosity and goodwill, would eventually transform into a figure of Santa Claus, a beloved character who brings gifts to children around the world. Yet, the legend of St. Nicholas did not evolve alone. In parts of Europe, particularly in alpine regions, there was another figure, Krampus, who became entwined with the story of St. Nicholas. While St. Nicholas rewarded the good with gifts, Krampus, a terrifying demon-like creature, was said to punish the bad. Children who had misbehaved during the year were said to be dragged away by Krampus, who would beat them with a bundle of birch branches or carry them off to his lair. This dichotomy between the benevolent street Nicholas and the punishing Krampus represented a moral lesson about the importance of good behavior, and their contrasting roles became an essential part of Christmas celebrations in certain European countries. Krampusnacht or Krampus Night, celebrated on December 5th, still exists in many parts of Europe today, where people dress as Krampus, parading through the streets in a frightening spectacle. As Christianity continued to spread, the symbolic nature of the Christmas season was absorbed into a broader cultural framework. The Christian themes of redemption, light overcoming darkness, and the celebration of life were intertwined with older myths and legends. The result was a rich tapestry of stories, figures, and symbols that would eventually come to define Christmas traditions across Europe and, later, the world. These stories were passed down through generations, each adding new layers of meaning and richness to the holiday, transforming the solstice and the seasonal festivals into the Christmas we recognize today. What remains is a powerful connection between ancient traditions and modern celebrations, each retaining a piece of the magic and mystery that marked the longest night of the year. Today, as we decorate our homes, exchange gifts, and gather around a festive table, we are not merely engaging in a modern holiday ritual. We are continuing a tradition that spans centuries, one that ties us to the rhythms of nature, to the ancient desire for warmth, light, and connection during the coldest months of the year. Christmas, in its many forms, is not just a time of religious celebration, but also a reflection of the timeless human need to find joy, hope, and meaning in the darkness. It is a celebration of life's resilience, of light's triumph over darkness, and of the enduring spirit of generosity and kindness that defines the human experience. And as we celebrate, we honor the myths, stories, and traditions that have shaped this holiday and made it one of the most beloved times of the year. Saint Nicholas, the man behind the legend, was a figure whose kindness and generosity became the foundation for one of the most beloved traditions in the world, the story of Santa Claus. His life, though long shrouded in myth, was rooted in the early Christian world of the 4th century. Born in the small town of Patera, in what is now Turkey, Nicholas was raised in a Christian family, and from an early age, he was known for his deep piety and compassion. His parents, wealthy and devout, ensured that Nicholas received a good education and was well versed in both scripture and the teachings of the church. However, the story of Nicholas would truly begin to take shape after the untimely death of his parents when he was still a young man. Instead of squandering his inheritance, he used his wealth to help others, particularly the poor and the sick, setting the stage for the many acts of generosity that would define his life. One of the most famous legends about St. Nicholas involves his secret acts of charity. In the town of Myra, where he later became bishop, there was a poor man with 3 daughters. The man could not afford dowries for his daughters, and as a result, they faced a grim prospect of being sold into slavery or forced into a life of shame. Hearing of their plight, Nicholas was moved with compassion and decided to help. He secretly dropped bags of gold coins into the man's house, 1 bag for each daughter, thus ensuring that the girls would have dowries and the chance for a better life. This act of kindness became one of the defining stories of Nicholas's life. His generosity was not done for recognition or praise, but rather out of a genuine love for his fellow man. Over time, stories like this one spread far and wide, and Nicholas became known not only as a good Christian, but as a protector of the poor and the helpless. Though we know Nicholas's life as a bishop was marked by devotion and service to the church, his reputation grew due to these miraculous deeds. His role in defending the Christian faith and the church during a time of political unrest and religious persecution helped cement his place as a beloved figure in Christianity. He was present at the First Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, where early church leaders gathered to discuss the nature of the Trinity and the role of Jesus Christ in Christian doctrine. Though he was known for his gentle spirit, he was also a passionate advocate for orthodoxy, and legend holds that he was so vehement in his defense of faith that he physically struck the heretic Arius during the proceedings. Though this act of violence was out of character, it illustrated Nicholas's unflinching commitment to his beliefs and to the protection of the church. The legends of St. Nicholas's life became a part of Christian tradition, especially in the Eastern Orthodox Church, where his feast day, December 6th, was widely celebrated. Over the centuries, his popularity spread across Europe, and his image evolved, taking on characteristics that align with the cultures and customs of different regions. In the Netherlands, for instance, the figure of St. Nicholas was known as Santa Claus, a kind and noble figure who arrived each year on December 5th to reward well-behaved children with gifts, while also warning the naughty ones. Santa Claus was depicted as an elderly man dressed in bishop's robes, with a long white beard, riding a horse and accompanied by helpers, who were often depicted as mischievous companions. The image of Santa Claus eventually crossed the ocean to America, where Dutch settlers brought their traditions with them. It was in America that the figure of Santa Claus would undergo a transformation. In the early 19th century, the American writer Washington Irving, in his work Knickerbocker's History of New York, mentioned St. Nicholas as a jolly, rotund man who traveled in a sleigh. Irving's description, which was influenced by the Dutch traditions, contributed to the evolving image of St. Nicholas as a jovial figure. But it wasn't until the 1820s, when the famous illustrator Thomas Nast began creating images of St. Nicholas for Harper's Weekly, that the modern image of Santa Claus as a portly, bearded man in a red suit began to take shape. Nast's illustrations portrayed Santa as a cheerful, plump figure who traveled with reindeer and brought gifts to children on Christmas Eve. Over time, the figure of Santa Claus became even more ingrained in American culture, especially as companies like Coca-Cola used his image in advertisements during the 1930s. The modern Santa Claus, as we know him today, became a symbol of holiday cheer and gift-giving, his image now universally recognizable. Yet, even as Santa Claus evolved into a beloved, commercialized figure of the 20th century, his roots in the real-life St. Nicholas remained intact. The essence of St. Nicholas's character, his generosity, his concern for the well-being of others, and his embodiment of the spirit of Christmas, remain the core of the holiday tradition. The transformation of St. Nicholas into Santa Claus is a fascinating example of how myths and legends evolve over time, adapting to changing cultural landscapes while still retaining elements of their original form. While the jolly, red-suited Santa Claus has become the dominant image associated with Christmas in many parts of the world, the spirit of St. Nicholas lives on the charitable acts, the emphasis on kindness and giving, and the enduring message of hope and goodwill that defines the Christmas season. The evolution of St. Nicholas also highlights how stories and traditions are shaped by the cultures in which they are told, with each society adding its own layers of meaning and significance to the original narrative. Yet, even in this modern era, the figure of St. Nicholas remains a potent symbol of generosity and compassion. In many parts of the world, particularly in countries like the Netherlands, Germany, and Poland, St. Nicholas's feast day is still celebrated with much reverence and festivity. On December 6th, children put out their shoes, hoping that St. Nicholas will fill them with treats and small gifts. As the centuries passed, the figure of St. Nicholas continued to evolve, shaping the Christmas traditions of many cultures across Europe and eventually the world. The transformation from a Christian bishop who performed acts of generosity to the jolly, gift-giving Santa Claus that we recognize today is one of the most fascinating aspects of the holiday's mythology. It was a slow and complex process, influenced by a variety of historical, cultural, and religious factors, which ultimately combined the old-world legends with new societal values and emerging commercial practices. The first significant shift in the evolution of St. Nicholas occurred in the Netherlands, where he became known as Santa Claus. Santa Claus, while still retaining much of his religious roots as a protector of children and a bringer of gifts, took on certain characteristics that reflected Dutch traditions. The Dutch version of St. Nicholas was a kind and benevolent figure, portrayed as an elderly man dressed in bishop's attire, complete with a mitre and a long white beard. He was said to ride a white horse, delivering gifts to well-behaved children on the evening of December 5th, known as Sinterklaasavond, or St. Nicholas Eve. Children would leave their shoes out, and Santa Claus would fill them with small presents and sweets, a tradition that echoes the charitable nature of the historical St. Nicholas. The Dutch settlers who brought the tradition of Santa Claus to America in the 18th century would lay the groundwork for what would eventually become the modern Santa Claus. As they settled in New York and other parts of the United States, they continued the custom of celebrating Santa Claus, but this figure began to evolve as it mingled with other cultural influences. By the early 19th century, the image of Santa Claus began to take on new forms, influenced by American writers, artists, and societal changes. Washington Irving, an American author known for works like Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, is often credited with helping to shape the image of St. Nicholas in America. In his 1809 satirical work, Knickerbocker's History of New York, Irving described St. Nicholas as a jolly, pipe-smoking figure who flew over the rooftops in a sleigh. This portrayal, which was lighter and more playful than traditional, solemn depiction of Santa Claus, marked the beginning of a shift towards a more cheerful, magical Santa Claus that we would come to know. The transformation continued in the early 19th century, particularly with the publication of Clement Clarke Moore's poem A Visit from St. Nicholas in 1823. This poem, which is more commonly known today as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," was instrumental in solidifying the image of Santa Claus as a jolly, rotund man with a white beard, a red suit, and a love for spreading joy. Moore's portrayal of St. Nicholas as a magical figure who travels in a sleigh, pulled by reindeer, further reinforced the idea of Santa Claus as a figure of wonder and excitement for children. The poem also introduced a notion of Santa entering homes through the chimney, bringing gifts to children as they slept, a detail that added to mystery and magic of the holiday season. The idea of Santa Claus as a figure who embodied the spirit of Christmas was now firmly established, but it wasn't until the mid-19th century that this image would be further popularized and spread around the world. In the 1860s, the American illustrator Thomas Nast began to create a series of illustrations of Santa Claus for Harper's Weekly. Nast illustrations, which were featured in the magazine from the 1860s to the 1880s, were incredibly influential in shaping the modern image of Santa Claus. Through his artwork, Nast depicted Santa as a plump, jolly figure with a long white beard, dressed in a fur-lined red suit. His Santa Claus was not only a bringer of gifts, but also a symbol of cheer, warmth, and generosity. Nash Santa was portrayed as a figure who cared for children, who could be found at the North Pole with his workshop full of elves, and who spread happiness throughout the world. His illustrations helped to solidify the image of Santa Claus as a beloved holiday figure who embodied the joy and goodwill of the Christmas season. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Santa Claus had become an iconic symbol of Christmas in the United States, and his image was being spread across the globe through advertising, literature, and other media. One of the most notable examples of this was the Coca-Cola Company's decision to use Santa Claus in their holiday advertisements. In the 1930s, Coca-Cola commissioned artist Haddon Sundblom to create a series of Christmas advertisements featuring Santa Claus. Sundblom's portrayal of Santa Claus, which depicted him as a warm, friendly, and approachable figure enjoying a Coke, became one of the most widely recognized images of Santa in the world. His cheerful and welcoming portrayal of Santa Claus further cemented the idea of Santa as a figure who spread holiday joy, generosity, and love. The modern-day image of Santa Claus as a portly, jolly man in a red suit with a white beard and a belly that shakes like a bowl full of jelly is now universally recognized. Santa has become a central figure of Christmas celebrations, and his mythos has expanded beyond the simple act of gift-giving. Over the years, Santa Claus has become a symbol of the magic and wonder of the holiday season, representing the joy of giving, the spirit of kindness, and the happiness that comes from spending time with loved ones. However, beneath this cheerful exterior lies a more profound story, a story that ties back to the generosity of the historical St. Nicholas. Santa Claus, like St. Nicholas before him, is a symbol of the power of selflessness. The essence of both figures is the idea that Christmas is not about receiving, but about giving. This message is reflected in the way Santa Claus is portrayed in the modern era. He is not merely a man who brings gifts, but a figure who embodies the spirit of the season, a season dedicated to generosity, compassion, and goodwill. In this sense, Santa Claus serves as a reminder that Christmas is about more than just a material exchange of presents. It is about the joy of giving and the warmth that comes from sharing love and kindness with others. In many ways, the transformation of St. Nicholas into Santa Claus mirrors the evolution of Christmas itself. What began as a religious celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ slowly transformed into a more secular holiday, centered on family gatherings, gift-giving, and goodwill. But through this transformation, the core values of Christmas, kindness, generosity, and the spirit of community, have remained unchanged. Santa Claus, as a modern incarnation of St. Nicholas, continues to remind us of these values, offering us a chance to reflect on the true meaning of the holiday season. As we hang stockings by the fireplace, put out cookies for Santa, and eagerly anticipate the gift on the tree, we are not just celebrating the commercialized version of Christmas. We are partaking in a tradition that has evolved over centuries, drawing on the generosity of St. Nicholas and the magical spirit of Santa Claus. The figure of Santa, much like the man he was based on, represents the timeless desire to spread joy and kindness to those around us. And as we pass down these traditions to the next generation, we continue to honor the legacy of St. Nicholas, who, through his selfless act of charity, created a myth that would bring joy to countless generations for centuries to come. As we explore the origins of Christmas, it's impossible to overlook the darker counterpart to St. Nicholas, Krampus. The figure of Krampus, a terrifying creature from Alpine folklore, stands in stark contrast to the kindly and generous Santa Claus. Where Santa brings joy and gifts to well-behaved children, Krampus is said to punish those who have misbehaved throughout the year. His role in the Christmas mythos adds a layer of complexity and tension to the holiday, highlighting the balance between reward and punishment, light and dark, which is central to many traditions worldwide. Krampus is not just a singular figure, but rather a manifestation of several older mythological creatures that roam the cold, dark forests of Europe. His roots are deeply entrenched in pre-Christian Alpine traditions, where he was often depicted as a horned, demonic figure with a long, pointed tongue and chains that rattled ominously in the night. Unlike the jolly figure of Santa Claus, Krampus was a fearsome being, and his role in the holiday festivities was one of terror rather than joy. In some regions, children were told that if they were naughty, Krampus would come for them, dragging them away to his lair, where they would face a dark and unpleasant fate. This ominous figure embodied the fear of the unknown, the dangers that lurked in the dark forests, and the punishment for those who strayed from the path of righteousness. In alpine regions such as Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, the figure of Krampus became a central part of Christmas traditions, particularly on the night of December 5th, known as Krampusnacht. This night marked the beginning of the Christmas celebrations, and on it, people would gather to celebrate the duality of Christmas, light and dark. Krampusnacht was a night of revelry, but also of fear, where men dressed in elaborate Krampus costumes, with fur-covered bodies, grotesque masks, and long, curling horns, would roam the streets. These men, known as Krampuslauf, Krampus Run, would chase children and adults alike, playfully but terrifyingly threatening to carry them away in sacks or baskets. The sight of these creatures, accompanied by the sound of rattling chains and the sound of bells, was meant to remind the people of the ever-present dangers of misbehavior. The juxtaposition of Krampus with St. Nicholas during this time of year created an intriguing tension. While Street Nicholas would reward children who had been good with gifts and treats, Krampus served as a stark reminder of the consequences of bad behavior. In this sense, Krampus was not just a figure of fear, he was also a moral lesson. His appearance in folklore was a reflection of society that believed in the importance of maintaining order and discipline. The figure of Krampus represented the darker side of human nature, the potential for cruelty, misdeeds, and punishment. But in contrast to Santa Claus, who was purely benevolent, Krampus was a figure who served a specific purpose: to remind children of the consequences of their actions and to keep them on the path of good behavior. The origins of Krampus are intertwined with ancient pagan traditions, many of which predate Christianity. In particular, Krampus is thought to have emerged from the pagan celebration of the winter solstice, a time when ancient peoples honored the forces of nature, both good and evil. During these solstice celebrations, people would often dress in costumes that represented both the divine and the demonic, reflecting the duality of nature itself. In some areas, these costumes were worn during the winter months as part of a larger ritual to drive away evil spirits and ensure the return of the sun. Krampus, with his horned appearance and fearsome features, can be seen as an extension of this tradition, embodying the dark, chaotic forces of winter that were believed to need to be kept at bay. As Christianity spread throughout Europe, it absorbed many of these older traditions, including the figure of Krampus. However, Krampus never fully integrated into the Christian narrative in the way that St. Nicholas did. While Street Nicholas became a symbol of Christian charity and generosity, Krampus remained a figure rooted in fear and superstition. His association with Christmas was a reminder of the balance between good and evil, between the light of St. Nicholas and the darkness that Krampus represented. Despite his darker origins, Krampus became a central figure in the holiday celebrations of the Alpine regions, where the legend was passed down through generations. His image evolved over time, and while he was initially depicted as a frightening, almost monstrous creature, his role in the celebrations softened in some areas. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Krampus became more of a playful figure, a mischievous character who would threaten to carry children away, but who was ultimately harmless. Still, the underlying themes of punishment and discipline remained a part of the legend, and Krampus continued to serve as a moral reminder for both children and adults alike. In the 20th century, particularly after World War II, the figure of Krampus saw a decline in popularity, especially as Christmas became increasingly commercialized. However, in recent years, there has been a resurgence of interest in Krampus, particularly among those seeking to reclaim the older, darker aspects of the holiday season. In countries like Austria and Germany, Krampus parades, where participants dress up as a creature and roam the streets in a terrifying display, have become popular once again. These events are both festive and eerie, with people enjoying the thrill of being scared, while simultaneously celebrating the return of light and warmth that Christmas brings. The resurgence of Krampus in popular culture can also be seen in films, television shows, and even Halloween celebrations, where the figure of Krampus is often reimagined as a supernatural being who punishes those who have been bad throughout the year. This modern interpretation of Krampus, while often more fantastical and exaggerated, highlights the enduring power of the character and his role in the collective imagination. In many ways, Krampus has come to represent the darker side of Christmas, the part of the holiday that is often forgotten or overshadowed by the more pleasant aspects of the season. But in embracing this darker figure, People are able to reconnect with a full range of emotions and experiences that come with the winter season: fear, joy, anticipation, and ultimately, redemption. Krampus, in his many forms, serves as a reminder that Christmas is not just about presents and festivities, but also about balance. While the holiday is filled with cheer, love, and generosity, it is also a time to reflect on the moral lessons that shape our lives. The presence of Krampus in Christmas lore challenges the idea that the holiday season is only about joy and celebration, reminding us that it is also a time for self-reflection, discipline, and the consequences of our actions. Just as the light of St. Nicholas shines brightly, so too does the shadow of Krampus lurk, reminding us that in every act of kindness, there must also be a recognition of the darker forces that shape our world. Krampus, then, is not just a figure of fear, but a reminder of the dual nature of the holiday season, of the tension between light and dark, reward and punishment, that is an essential part of the human experience. Krampus, the fearsome figure of Christmas mythology, is not just a creature of folklore, but a character woven into the fabric of European tradition, particularly in the alpine regions of Austria, Germany, and parts of Switzerland. While the figure of St. Nicholas dominates the modern Christmas narrative, Krampus represents an essential, albeit darker, counterpart to the holiday celebrations. To truly understand Krampus' role in European culture, it's important to explore the ways in which Krampus is celebrated today and how his presence on the Christmas calendar continues to shape festive traditions. The first Friday of December, known as Krampusnacht, Krampus Night, marks the beginning of the Krampus season, particularly in countries like Austria, Germany, and parts of Hungary. The tradition is a significant and unique aspect of Christmas festivities in these regions, where both Street Nicholas and Krampus are intertwined. The night is set aside for Krampuslauf, Krampus Run, a chaotic, theatrical event that brings to life the ancient legends of Krampus. During Krampusnacht, groups of men and women don elaborate, grotesque costumes to transform into Krampus himself or into a variety of other terrifying winter figures. The costumes typically consist of long fur-covered bodies, twisted horns, and demonic, often unsettling masks that convey the ferocity of the character. The costumes can be so elaborate that they take months to prepare, with participants often handcrafting the masks and other pieces of their attire. On this night, participants, sometimes in hundreds, take to the streets, running through town squares and villages with chains rattling behind them. The clattering of chains is meant to evoke the feeling of Krampus' wrath, and is one of the most frightening aspects of the Krampuslauf. The procession is loud and chaotic, with masked figures running around, attempting to scare onlookers, particularly children, by lunging toward them or shaking their chains. The overall effect is one of unsettling energy, thrilling, festive, and eerie all at once. While the event is intended to be fun and filled with laughter, also serves to remind people of the ancient, darker side of Christmas mythology, where consequences and discipline played a central role. Krampusnacht is a celebration of both light and dark, with St. Nicholas' arrival on December 6th following Krampusnacht, restoring the balance between the benevolent and the punishing. This duality, good versus evil, light versus darkness, has long been central to European Christmas traditions. While St. Nicholas rewards the good, Krampus punishes the naughty, offering a contrasting reminder that not all actions go unpunished. This combination of the two figures creates a perfect balance in the holiday festivities, with one serving to instill the virtues of kindness, generosity, and good behavior, while the other reinforces the importance of morality and discipline. Although Krampuslauf is an occasion filled with fun, music, and community spirit, there's an underlying sense of fear that still clings to the event. Krampus himself, as a mythological figure, was originally believed to be an embodiment of the winter darkness, of the wild and chaotic forces that dwell in the cold, snowy forests of the Alps. In the traditional stories, Krampus was not only a figure who punished children for bad behavior, but was also thought to be a spirit who haunted the dark forests and mountains during the long winter nights. His terrifying appearance, with his horns, fur, and devilish features, is a reminder of the dangers that once lurked beyond the safety of home. Before the comforts of modern living, the winter months were fraught with danger, with people often venturing into forests for firewood or food and encountering perilous conditions. Krampus' association with this dark, unpredictable side of nature reflects an ancient understanding of the balance between light and dark, safety and danger. The importance of Krampusnacht in the modern context cannot be overstated. As the world has become more commercialized and Christmas increasingly focused on consumerism and materialism, the ancient roots of the holiday have been obscured. The resurgence of Krampus in contemporary Europe, particularly through events like Krampus, has allowed people to reconnect with the deeper, older traditions of Christmas. It has also sparked an interest in reclaiming the darker, more mystical aspects of the holiday season. In countries where Krampusnacht is celebrated, there has been a revival of interest in old folklore, and the Krampus figure has evolved into a symbol of rebellion against the sanitized, commercialized version of Christmas. In recent years, Krampus has been embraced by various cultural movements, with celebrations of Krampusnacht expanding beyond Europe. The character has found its way into popular culture, with Krampus appearing in films, television shows, and even Halloween celebrations. In these modern adaptations, Krampus is often portrayed as a terrifying force of nature who punishes the wicked, reinforcing the moral lessons associated with the original folklore. However, the figure has also been reimagined in a more playful and satirical light, with some modern interpretations of Krampus focusing on the absurdity of his role and the humorous aspects of his frightening persona. The popularity of Krampus has led to an increase in interest in dark folklore and alternative Christmas traditions, with many people seeking a more authentic, less commercialized experience of the holiday season. In the United States, for example, Krampus-themed events have begun to spring up where people gather to celebrate the figure and its connection to ancient traditions. These events often feature Krampus parades, costume contests, and even Krampus-themed bars or parties, where attendees are encouraged to dress as Krampus and revel in the eerie, chaotic atmosphere of the holiday. This growing interest in Krampus represents a desire to reclaim the older, more meaningful aspects of Christmas and to explore the deeper cultural significance of the holiday. The figures of St. Nicholas and Krampus, though seemingly opposites, exist in a unique balance within the folklore of Christmas. One embodies the ideals of kindness, generosity, and warmth, while the other is a reminder of fear, punishment, and the consequences of bad behavior. Together, they create a dichotomy that has shaped the way people celebrate Christmas, emphasizing the dual nature of the holiday, the joyous and the cautionary. This contrast between the two figures forms an integral part of the tradition and spirit of Christmas, and the way these two characters interact over the centuries reveals much about human nature and the cultural values we hold dear during the holiday season. At first glance, St. Nicholas and Krampus appear to occupy opposing sides of the moral spectrum. St. Nicholas, based on the real-life bishop from Myra, is known for his acts of generosity, helping the poor, saving children, and spreading joy. His kindness and goodwill are universal, representing the positive, benevolent aspects of human nature. His transformation into the figure of Santa Claus was a natural progression, as his association with gift-giving and the Christmas spirit became a central theme of the holiday. Santa's role today is that of a joyous, cheerful figure, beloved by children, who rewards good behavior with presents and kindness, and symbolizes a spirit of giving. On the other hand, Krampus is a creature from Alpine folklore, a devilish figure who, instead of rewarding good behavior, punishes the naughty. His origins, deeply rooted in pre-Christian pagan traditions, make him a terrifying reminder of the darker forces that exist in the world. Krampus is a figure that doesn't just scare children. He represents a societal need to enforce morality through fear. His role in the mythology of Christmas serves as a cautionary tale, reinforcing the concept that actions have consequences. In contrast to Santa Claus, who is always kind and warm, Krampus is a figure who reminds us that there's another side to the story, where bad behavior does not go unpunished. These two figures, one warm and one frightening, are part of a larger tradition of Christmas that is not just about the celebration of goodwill, but also the acknowledgement of the darker aspects of life. By placing them together in the same season, Christmas encapsulates the complexities of human experience, the joy of generosity and love, but also the necessary reminder that actions have consequences. This tension between reward and punishment, light and dark, is a central theme not only of Christmas, but of many traditions and mythologies around the world. It reflects the moral framework that has been passed down through generations, where the stories we tell our children help to shape their understanding of right and wrong, good and evil. The combination of St. Nicholas and Krampus also speaks to a deeper psychological need for balance in our lives. Human beings are naturally drawn to the light, the joy, and the warmth of figures like St. Nicholas. We crave the positive reinforcement that comes with being good, the sense of fulfillment that comes from receiving gifts and spreading love. However, there is also a recognition that without the darker elements of our existence, the lighter ones would not seem as bright. The presence of Krampus within the Christmas mythos serves as a necessary counterpoint to the overwhelming positivity of Santa Claus. In many ways, Krampus functions as a reminder that the world is not perfect, that life is not always fair, and that we must all take responsibility for our actions. His role is not merely to frighten, but to uphold a sense of justice, one that balances the scales when St. Nicholas' kindness might seem to overshadow the need for discipline. This contrast also underscores the dynamic between tradition and change. Over the centuries, St. Nicholas has evolved from a historical bishop into modern-day figure Santa Claus, shaped by various cultural influences, including the Dutch Sinterklaas, American writers like Washington Irving, and artists such as Thomas Nast and Haddon Sundblom. Santa Claus, now a symbol of commercialized joy and holiday cheer, has become an integral part of the Christmas season, associated with happiness, warmth, and generosity. However, as Christmas has become increasingly secularized and commercialized, figures like Krampus have gained renewed popularity. The modern resurgence of Krampus, particularly in countries where Krampusnacht is celebrated, represents a reclamation of older, more complex traditions that emphasize the balance between light and dark, good and evil, joy and fear. Krampus' reemergence in contemporary culture also highlights the growing desire for authenticity in our celebrations. In a world that has increasingly commercialized Christmas, with its focus on shopping, decorations, and consumerism, many people are seeking a return to the deeper, more meaningful aspects of the holiday season. The resurgence of Krampus reflects a longing to reconnect with ancient traditions that celebrate not just the positive, but also the moral and cautionary elements of life. The tradition of Krampusnacht, with its elaborate costumes and chaotic celebrations, is a way for people to embrace the wild, untamed aspects of Christmas, where fear, superstition, and dark mythology still hold a place in the modern world. While Krampus and St. Nicholas may seem to stand on opposite ends of the moral spectrum, their roles in Christmas mythology are intricately tied. The two figures complement each other, creating a sense of moral balance. St. Nicholas rewards good behavior, offering gifts and kindness, while Krampus reminds us that there are consequences for wrongdoing. Together, they encapsulate the full spectrum of human experience, reinforcing the idea that life is not simply about receiving rewards, but also about understanding the consequences of one's actions. This interplay between reward and punishment is a theme that resonates throughout history, appearing not only in Christmas myths, but in various cultural stories and traditions. In many ways, it is a reflection of the broader human condition, a constant dance between light and dark, good and evil, love and fear. The duality of St. Nicholas and Krampus also points to the importance of boundaries in shaping moral and social order. In every culture, there are systems of rules and consequences that define behavior, and these systems are often reinforced through myth and folklore. The story of St. Nicholas and Krampus provides a framework for understanding these rules and their consequences. While St. Nicholas embodies the rewards for good behavior, Krampus represents the penalties for misdeeds, reinforcing the notion that society cannot function without both kindness and discipline. This balance is essential not only for personal growth and development, but also for maintaining harmony within communities. In modern times, the figure of St. Nicholas has become so ingrained in popular culture that many have lost sight of the darker counterpart, Krampus. Yet, in embracing Krampus and revisiting the older, more complex traditions of Christmas, we are reminded of the lessons these figures teach us. Father Frost, or Dead Moros, stands as one of the most enchanting and enduring figures in Russian folklore, and his presence within the large mythology of Christmas brings a unique and distinctly different flavor to the holiday season compared to the Western traditions dominated by figures like St. Nicholas or Santa Claus. This ancient Slavic character, who has evolved over the centuries, embodies the harsh yet beautiful winter landscape of Russia and represents the spirit of winter itself, both cold and mystical, both feared and loved. Father Frost's role in the winter festivities of Russia is not just a reflection of the season, but also a symbol of the balance between the cold, isolating aspect of winter and the warmth and hope that emerge when people come together to celebrate. Father Frost's roots can be traced back to the pagan beliefs of pre-Christian Slavic cultures, where winter was a time of survival and reverence for the harsh forces of nature. The Slavs personified winter as a season controlled by various deities, and Father Frost, initially depicted as a powerful winter god, was one of the most prominent figures. He was seen as a being who both commanded the cold and could bring about winter's most severe weather, including snowstorms and freezing winds. But while he was feared for his power over nature, he was also seen as a necessary force, one that brought about the frost that preserved the land during the long months of winter. Without Father Frost's cold, the land would not be able to regenerate, and the cycle of life would be disrupted. This understanding of Father Frost as both a creator and destroyer mirrored the duality inherent in many ancient myths, where gods and spirits represent both life-giving and life-taking forces. As Christianity spread across Russia, Father Frost's role began to merge with other aspects of Christian tradition, particularly the celebration of the New Year and the Christmas season. In the Christianized version of his myth, Father Frost became a more benevolent figure, albeit still associated with the cold and winter's challenges. However, he retained his essential connection to the land, nature, and the changing seasons. By the time of the 19th and 20th centuries, Father Frost's character had been firmly established as a symbol of winter itself, a figure who was simultaneously feared for his coldness but cherished for his role in the seasonal cycle. Father Frost's relationship with the New Year's festivities is particularly important, as it is during this time that his role in Russian culture shines most brightly. In Russian tradition, the New Year celebration, which is marked on the evening of December 31st, is the biggest holiday of the winter season, and Father Frost is its central figure. His character is often portrayed as a grandfatherly figure, dressed in a long, fur-lined coat that is either blue or red, with a long, white beard and a staff, which he uses to guide his way through the snow and ice. Father Frost travels with his granddaughter, the snow maiden, Sneguraka, who is a symbol of the snow itself, and together they bring joy, presents, and merriment to children and families across Russia. Unlike the Western figure Santa Claus, who brings gifts on Christmas Eve, Father Frost arrives with the New Year and is an essential part of the celebrations that mark the transition into a new year. He brings gifts to children, but his role is also a symbol of the passage of time, a reminder that with every year comes both the chill of winter and the promise of renewal. The figure of the Snow Maiden, often portrayed as a young girl who embodies the beauty and purity of winter, accompanies Father Frost in these celebrations, symbolizing the harmony between the cold of winter and the warmth of the human spirit. Together, they bring life to the long, dark winter nights, making the cold season a time of festivity and joy rather than one of isolation and fear. Father Frost's presence in Russian holiday traditions reflects the unique relationship between the Russian people and the harsh winter conditions that dominate the landscape. Russia's long, bitter winters have historically been a time of both physical and emotional endurance, with the cold permeating every aspect of life. For centuries, winter in Russia was a season of hardship, where survival depended on the warmth of the hearth, the preservation of food, and the ability to withstand the harsh weather. In this context, Father Frost's role was not only that of a seasonal figure who marked the arrival of winter, but also a force who dictated the rhythms of life during the cold months. Yet, over time, his role evolved from one of fear and reverence to one of joy and celebration. He became a character who was not only feared for his coldness, but also loved for his ability to bring people together during the long, dark days of winter. Father Frost is a figure who has continued to evolve in contemporary Russian culture. In the Soviet era, during the time when Christmas celebrations were banned under communist rule, Father Frost was reimagined as a secular figure who was still central to the New Year festivities. The Soviet government, which sought to minimize religious influence in the public sphere, co-opted Father Frost as part of the New Year celebration, using him as a figure of cheer and national unity. In this context, Father Frost became a character who transcended religious boundaries, symbolizing the hope and renewal that accompanies the arrival of a new year. This transformation of Father Frost reflects the adaptability of folklore and mythology, as it allows figures to evolve and change in response to the shifting needs and values of society. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the figure of Father Frost underwent a revival, and his role in Russian Christmas and New Year celebrations once again became a focal point of festive traditions. Today, Father Frost is still a key figure in Russian New Year celebrations, but he has also become a more internationally recognized character. The character of Father Frost, along with the Snow Maiden, has been adapted in various forms in popular culture, including films, books, and television shows, both in Russia and beyond. His image, however, remains rooted in the traditional Russian holiday celebrations, where he is seen as a symbol of winter's beauty and harshness, as well as a reminder of the resilience and warmth of the human spirit during the coldest time of the year. In the broader context of Christmas and winter traditions, Father Frost serves as a perfect counterpart to figures like Street Nicholas and Santa Claus. While Street Nicholas and Santa Claus represent warmth, generosity, and the comfort home, Father Frost symbolizes the beauty and harshness of winter, the balance between the cold, which forces people to seek warmth and togetherness, and the promise of renewal that comes with the passing of time. His role in Russian culture emphasizes the resilience required to endure the long winter months, and the joy that can be found even in the coldest, darkest season of the year. Father Frost's dual nature as both a figure of winter severity and its beauty makes him an enduring symbol in Russian folklore and beyond. His role in the holiday celebrations, bringing joy and gifts while also embodying the harsh realities of winter, underscores the delicate balance between the light and dark, the harsh and the gentle, that defines a holiday season. Through the figure of Father Frost, the people of Russia and beyond are reminded that winter is not just a season to endure, but one to embrace, with all its challenges and wonders. Father Frost represents the spirit of winter in its purest form, an embodiment of nature's power, human endurance, and the capacity to find warmth and joy even in the coldest of times. Father Frost, or Dead Moros, has a remarkable connection to the modern figure of Santa Claus, particularly in the way both characters have evolved and influenced the cultural celebration of Christmas around the world. The journey from the ancient winter spirit to the modern gift-bringer we know today is filled with layers of historical transformation, cultural blending, and the intertwining of folklore from diverse traditions. While the character of Father Frost remains deeply embedded in Russian tradition, it's impossible to overlook how the similarities and contrasts between Father Frost and Santa Claus highlight the fascinating ways in which myths adapt and merge across different cultures. The overlap between these two figures goes beyond mere physical characteristics. It touches on the spirit of the holiday season itself, the joy of giving, the importance of family, and the celebration of light during the darkest time of the year. At first glance, Father Frost and Santa Claus share several physical traits. Both are elderly men, distinguished by their long white beards, robes, and staffs, and both are depicted as jolly figures who bring gifts to children. However, while Santa Claus is often portrayed in a bright red suit with white fur trim, Father Frost typically wears a long, flowing coat of blue or sometimes red, decorated with white, sparkling snowflakes, and fur. The differences in their attire are symbolic of the unique cultural context from which each figure originates. Santa Claus, as we know him today, is largely an American creation, shaped by the influence of Dutch traditions, British influences, and the commercialization of Christmas, while Father Frost has evolved through a Russian context, where the long, harsh winters demand a different kind of respect for nature's power and beauty. Beyond their appearances, Father Frost and Santa Claus also diverge in terms of their roles within the holiday season. While Santa Claus is most commonly associated with Christmas Eve and the delivery of presents to well-behaved children, Father Frost's role is more closely tied to New Year's celebrations in Russia. In Russia, New Year's Eve is the focal point of the holiday season, a time when families gather, celebrate, and look forward to a fresh start in the coming year. The tradition of Father Frost bringing gifts is deeply ingrained in the Russian cultural fabric, and his association with the New Year symbolizes a transition into a new cycle, both the end of winter and the hope for the warmth of spring. The figure of Santa Claus, in contrast, is so firmly linked to Christmas in the Western world that his arrival on Christmas Eve has become an iconic part of the holiday experience. Despite these differences, the similarities between Father Frost and Santa Claus speak to a shared underlying theme, the idea of giving and the celebration of family. Both figures encourage generosity and reinforce the importance of kindness, of making others happy, particularly children, and creating memories that last a lifetime. Santa Claus, with his round belly and jolly laugh, represents the festive joy of Christmas, with his mission to spread happiness through the giving of gifts. Similarly, Father Frost's gifts symbolize a deeper connection to the natural world, representing the frost, the snow, and the season's blessings that, despite their harshness, bring about a renewal of life as the earth prepares for spring. Santa Claus's transformation into the modern figure we know today owes a great deal to the various cultural influences that shaped his image over time. The Americanized version of Santa Claus, as seen in Coca-Cola advertisements, illustrations by Thomas Nast, and stories like A Visit from St. Nicholas by Clement Clark Moore, has firmly established the contemporary image of Santa as a joyful, magical figure who travels around the world in a sleigh pulled by reindeer. While Santa's origins can be traced back to the Dutch Sinterklaas, who had connections to the historical St. Nicholas, the modern version of Santa has become so ingrained in the cultural landscape that it is recognized globally, often detached from its religious and historical roots. Santa Claus, through the commercialization of Christmas, has become a figure of pure merriment and holiday cheer, embodying the spirit of celebration and joy. On the other hand, Father Frost's image has been shaped by different cultural and historical forces. While his origins can be traced to pre-Christian Slavic winter deities, his image has evolved throughout the centuries, especially during the Soviet era, when Christmas was effectively suppressed in Russia. During the Soviet period, Father Frost was repurposed as a secular figure, his connection to Christianity downplayed, and he became more associated with New Year celebrations. In this context, Father Frost's role was not just to bring presents, but to symbolize hope and renewal, serving as a central figure in the New Year's festivities. This transformation allowed Father Frost to maintain a prominent place in Russian culture during a time when religious holidays were less publicly celebrated, and his role as a gift-bringer persisted even in the face of Soviet atheism. Interestingly, as Russia has returned to a more religiously open society since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Father Frost's role has expanded. Today, while New Year's remains a dominant holiday associated with Father Frost, he has also come to represent a bridge between the older pagan traditions of winter's power and the festive spirit of modern times. His character has evolved to reflect the enduring human connection to the winter season, symbolizing both the hardships of the cold months and the resilience of the people who endure it. As Christmas and New Year's traditions have become more globally intertwined, the figure of Father Frost stands as a reminder of the enduring power of folklore to adapt to new cultural realities while maintaining its roots in ancient customs. Santa Claus's global recognition has undoubtedly influenced the spread of Father Frost's image as well, especially in regions outside Russia. The winter solstice, which marks the longest night of the year, hold a special place in the hearts and minds of people around the world. It's a moment of cosmic significance, one that symbolizes a return of light after a long, dark period, offering a sense of renewal and hope. The ancient significance of the solstice as a time of darkness giving way to light is deeply woven into the fabric of many cultures, influencing not only how societies understood the cycles of nature, but also shaping some of the most cherished winter traditions we still celebrate today. The solstice was not merely a time of astronomical importance, but also a moment for communities to come together, to reaffirm their resilience, and to mark the triumph of light over the seemingly endless winter. In ancient times, the solstice represented a powerful turning point, both literally and figuratively. For early humans, it was a time when the sun's return was celebrated, as the days would gradually begin to grow longer again. This marked the beginning of the transition from the cold, dark winter months toward the warmth and growth of spring. People understood that the solstice signified nature's cycle of death and rebirth, a time when the sun, which had been absent and weak, began its gradual return, bringing with it the promise of growth, life, and a brighter future. These early solstice celebrations were centered around the reverence of the sun, its life-giving energy, and a belief that the return of the light marked a renewal of hope and prosperity. Many of the most well-known winter traditions we celebrate today are rooted in these ancient solstice rituals. From the Yule logs burned in northern Europe to the decoration of trees and homes with lights, these customs serve as symbolic gestures that celebrate the return of light. In pre-Christian Europe, the winter solstice was honored with feasts, sacrifices, and celebrations that recognized the sun's return. In Norse traditions, the festival of Yule celebrated the rebirth of the sun, and the Yule log was lit to symbolize the warmth and light that would soon return to the earth. The Yule log was often chosen with care, a special log that would burn for several days, sometimes even throughout the entirety of the 12 days of Christmas. This fire was not just a source of warmth, but a symbol of hope, perseverance, and renewal, a reminder that even the darkest nights would eventually give way to the light of day. In addition to the Yule log, other ancient winter traditions emphasize the importance of nature's renewal during the solstice. The practice of decorating trees, which is still a hallmark of modern Christmas celebrations, can also be traced back to these ancient solstice observances. In pre-Christian Germany, for example, people decorated trees with candles, apples, and other offerings to honor the gods and the sun. These decorated trees were seen as a symbol of life and fertility, even during the coldest, harshest months of the year. The evergreen tree, which remained green and vibrant even during the depths of winter, became a symbol of endurance and vitality, standing in contrast to the barren, leafless trees that were often found in the landscape during this time. The evergreen tree's ability to thrive in the winter's harshest conditions made it a natural symbol of the return of life, much as the sun's return marked the beginning of a new cycle of growth. The solstice also carried deep spiritual meaning. Across cultures, it was a time for reflection, introspection, and spiritual renewal. In ancient Rome, for example, the festival of Saturnalia was celebrated during the days surrounding the winter solstice. This festival was dedicated to the god Saturn, the deity of agriculture, liberation, and renewal. During Saturnalia, there was an inversion of social norms, where slaves and masters would switch places, and people would celebrate with feasts, gift-giving, and revelry. The festival was a time to renew bonds of friendship, celebrate the abundance of the earth, and reconnect with one another in a spirit of joy and equality. While Saturnalia itself had little to do with the birth of Christ, it was a precursor to the festive, celebratory aspects of Christmas, blending social equality with a spirit of abundance and light in the face of darkness. In other cultures, the solstice carried more specific religious meanings. In Egypt, for example, the god Horus, who was associated with the sun, was said to be reborn during the solstice. This symbolic rebirth of the sun god was celebrated with elaborate rituals and ceremonies that honored the cyclical nature of life and death, as well as the victory of light over darkness. Similarly, in Persia, the solstice marked the celebration of Yalda, an ancient festival that honored the triumph of the sun's return. Yalda was a time for families to gather together, share stories, and enjoy food and drink, celebrating the promise of light and warmth that the sun would bring in the coming months. These diverse solstice celebrations, though rooted in different cultural traditions, all shared the same core belief, that the return of the light was a symbol of hope and renewal, offering a fresh start and a sense of community in the face of winter's darkness. With the rise of Christianity, the winter solstice remained a time of celebration and renewal, albeit through a Christian lens. The birth of Jesus Christ, which became the focal point of Christmas, was positioned as the ultimate triumph of light over darkness. The Nativity story, with its themes of hope, salvation, and divine light entering a dark world, resonated deeply with the solstice celebrations of older, pre-Christian traditions. The date of December 25th was chosen to coincide with the solstice, aligning the birth of Christ with the symbolic return of the sun. This allowed Christianity to absorb and transform the ancient solstice festivals, giving them new religious meaning, while preserving their connection to the seasonal cycle of renewal and light. As Christianity spread throughout Europe, Christmas became the focal point of winter celebrations, gradually overshadowing the older solstice rituals. However, the essence of the solstice, its celebration of light and renewal, remained deeply embedded in the traditions of the holiday season. The lighting of candles, the decorating of trees, and the gathering of families all continue to honor the same themes of rebirth, hope, and a return of light. Even as commercialism and consumerism have overtaken much of the holiday, these ancient symbols continue to resonate with people, providing a sense of connection to the rhythms of nature and the cycles of life. In modern times, the winter solstice has become an opportunity for reflection, introspection, and a deeper understanding of the seasons and the cycles that govern our lives. While the busy holiday season often pulls our attention towards shopping, celebrations, and parties, there's a growing movement to reclaim the solstice as a time for personal renewal and spiritual reflection. Many people now celebrate the solstice in more intimate, quiet ways, lighting candles, gathering in small groups, and taking time to reflect on the passing of time and the coming of new beginnings. The Christmas tree, now a ubiquitous symbol of the holiday season, is much more than just a decoration. It is a living connection to ancient traditions, filled with layers of meaning and symbolism that have evolved over centuries. Its roots can be traced back to various pre-Christian winter festivals, where the evergreen tree served as a powerful symbol of life and endurance during the darkest days of the year. The use of evergreens in winter celebrations dates back thousands of years, long before the Christmas tree, as we know it today, took shape. In many ancient cultures, the evergreen tree, which remained green and vibrant through the harsh winter months, was seen as a symbol of immortality and resilience. For the ancient Egyptians, Romans, and Greeks, the evergreen tree represented life that persisted even in the coldest and most barren seasons, and it was revered as a symbol of nature's ability to endure and regenerate. In Northern Europe, especially in Scandinavia and the Germanic regions, the tradition of using evergreens during the winter solstice was widespread. The Vikings, for example, decorated their homes with evergreen boughs to honor the gods and to ensure the return of the sun after the longest night of the year. This connection between the evergreen tree and the solstice celebration was also present in ancient Rome, where the festival of Saturnalia, held in mid-December, involved decorating homes with greenery, including laurel branches, to celebrate the return of light. These practices, rooted in ancient reverence for nature, carried a profound message that life and growth will return even after the harshest of winters. As Christianity spread throughout Europe, it adapted many of these older pagan traditions, incorporating symbols like the evergreen tree into its own rituals and customs. By the Middle Ages, the tradition of bringing greenery into the home during the Christmas season had become widespread in many parts of Europe, particularly in Germany. The Christmas tree, as we recognize it today, is believed to have originated in Germany during the 16th century. The story goes that devout Christians in the region would bring a tree into their homes, decorating it with candles, apples, and other ornaments, as a way of symbolizing the tree of paradise, as described in the story of Adam and Eve. This tree, with its shining fruit and lights, was seen as a representation of the Garden of Eden and the promise of redemption and eternal life through Christ. The tradition of decorating a tree during Christmas was solidified in Germany, where it became a key part of the holiday celebrations. The earliest Christmas trees were adorned with simple decorations, apples, nuts, and other fruits, symbolizing abundance and the bounty of the earth. It wasn't until the 18th century that glass ornaments, which became the hallmark of the modern Christmas tree, were introduced. These delicate, often hand-blown ornaments, sometimes in the shape of angels or stars, began to replace the original fruits and nuts, giving the tree a more refined and festive appearance. The use of candles to decorate the tree also became popular, symbolizing the arrival of Christ as the light of the world. The tree, lit with candles, would shine brightly in the dark winter nights, bringing warmth and light into the home, much like the birth of Christ brought light into the world. The Christmas tree began to spread beyond Germany in the 19th century, especially after the British royal family, particularly Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, embraced the tradition. Prince Albert, who was born in Germany, introduced the Christmas tree to the British royal family, and soon after, the practice spread throughout Britain and beyond. Illustrations of the royal family celebrating around their decorated tree were published widely, and this image became synonymous with the Christmas season in the English-speaking world. As the tradition of the Christmas tree spread, it became more elaborate, with people adding tinsel, garlands, and eventually electric lights, all of which further enhanced the tree's beauty and the sense of magic it conveyed. In the United States, the Christmas tree became a central part of the holiday celebrations in the 19th century. German immigrants brought the tradition to America, where it was quickly adopted by a wide range of communities. The popularity of the Christmas tree grew in the United States after it was featured in magazines and newspapers, and by the end of the 19th century, it had become an essential part of Christmas celebrations across the country. The tree was no longer just a symbol of nature's resilience, but had become a symbol of family unity, warmth, and the joy of giving. The decorated tree became the centerpiece of holiday gatherings, with families coming together to adorn it with ornaments, string lights, and festive decorations, while gifts were placed beneath the tree to be opened on Christmas morning. The act of decorating the Christmas tree has evolved into a beloved tradition that brings families together every year. For many, it is a cherished ritual, an opportunity to reflect on the year that has passed, to bond with loved ones, and to share in the joy of the season. The tree has come to represent not just the promise of new life, as it did in ancient times, but also the warmth, generosity, and hope that define the spirit of Christmas. Each ornament on the tree carries its own story, from the handmade creations passed down through generations to the shiny, store-bought baubles that adorn the branches. The tree becomes a canvas of memories, each decoration a reflection of the people and experiences that have shaped the family's holiday traditions. In recent years, the Christmas tree has become more than just a decoration. It has become a symbol of cultural identity and personal expression. Some families go to great lengths to find the perfect tree, while others embrace artificial trees that can be reused year after year. The way a tree is decorated can vary greatly from one household to another, reflecting personal tastes, family traditions, and even regional influences. Yule, an ancient festival celebrating the winter solstice, has long been associated with midwinter feasts, rituals, and customs that highlight both the severity of winter and the hope for the return of light. This festival, rooted in the beliefs of the Germanic and Norse peoples, not only marked the longest night of the year, but also symbolized a renewal of the sun and the cycle of life. Yule was a celebration of the earth's ability to endure the cold and darkness of winter, with an eye toward the eventual arrival of spring. The traditions surrounding Yule were rich with symbolism, emphasizing themes of survival, hope, and rebirth. In ancient times, winter was seen as both a challenge and a necessary part of the natural order. The harshness of winter required communities to come together, to share what little they had, and to ensure that they could make it through the cold months until the return of spring. Yule was the moment in the year when people celebrated their resilience and the strength of the community. It was a time for feasting, storytelling, and rituals that honored the gods, spirits, and natural forces that controlled the seasons. For the Norse, the god Thor was central to the celebration, representing strength and protection against the darkness of winter. Yule was both a time of joy and solemn reflection, as people acknowledged the harshness of the season while looking forward to the promise of a new beginning. The Yule log is one of the most enduring symbols of this ancient festival. The tradition of burning a large log to mark the solstice was not only a practical way to keep warm during the long winter nights, but also a symbolic act that represented the return of the sun. The Yule log, often chosen with care from the heart of a tree, was burned for several days, with the flames representing the light that would eventually conquer the darkness. In some traditions, the ashes of the Yule log were kept and used for good luck, symbolizing the continuation of life and the protection of the home and family. This ritual reinforced a belief that light, represented by the fire, would eventually push back the darkness and bring renewal to the earth. Feasts and gatherings were an essential part of Yule celebrations. Communities would come together to share food, drink, and stories, marking the passage of time and reinforcing bonds within the group. These feasts were not just about nourishment. They were about celebrating the strength of the community, its ability to endure hardship, and its hope for the future. The Yule feast was a time for people to rest from the hard work of preparing for winter, to enjoy the fruits of their labor, and to give thanks for the survival of the community through another year. The sharing of food during Yule also had a spiritual dimension, as it was believed to strengthen the ties between the living and the gods, ensuring that the coming year will be prosperous and full of blessings. As the centuries passed and Christianity spread throughout Europe, many of the customs and symbols of Yule were absorbed into Christmas celebrations. The idea of the Yule log, for example, was incorporated into Christmas traditions, where it became associated with the light of Christ and the warmth of the holiday season. Similarly, the concept of the Yule feast found its way into Christmas dinners, where families gathered to share a festive meal. However, many of the more ancient aspects of Yule, such as the honoring of nature and the spirits of the land, gradually faded from mainstream Christmas celebrations. Despite this, the core elements of Yule, feasting, light, community, and renewal, remain central to how we celebrate Christmas today. In Scandinavian cultures, Yule has retained much of its original character. In Sweden, for example, the celebration of July continues to be a significant part of the holiday season. The July feast or Christmas dinner includes traditional foods such as herring, ham, and bread, and is often followed by the lighting of candles, which represent the return of the sun. The Swedish tradition of julklapp, or gift-giving, is also a key part of the Yule celebrations. In this tradition, gifts are exchanged in a spirit of generosity and goodwill, much like the giving of offerings to the gods during the ancient Yule festivals. The emphasis on light and warmth is still prevalent in modern Swedish Yule celebrations, where homes are adorned with candles, stars, and lights to brighten the long, dark winter nights. The Yule goat is another figure that has endured in Scandinavian Yule traditions. In ancient times, the Yule goat was believed to be a creature that helped deliver gifts during the Yule season, much like the figure of Santa Claus. The Yule goat was often depicted as a mischievous figure who would visit homes to bring both gifts and playful pranks. Over time, the Yule goat transformed into a symbol of the holiday season, and in some parts of Scandinavia, people still create elaborate Yule goat decorations made of straw. In this way, the Yule goat has become a reminder of the ancient pagan roots of Christmas celebrations, while also serving as a playful and festive symbol of the season. In addition to these traditions, Yule also had an important spiritual dimension. It was a time when people believed the boundary between the living and the dead was at its thinnest, and many rituals were performed to honor ancestors and spirits. In Norse mythology, the wild hunt was a significant part of Yule celebrations. Led by the god Odin, the wild hunt was a procession of spirits and hunters who rode through the sky, heralding the arrival of the sun. The wild hunt was both a source of fear and fascination, as it represented the spirits of the dead moving across the world, signaling the transition from one year to the next. It was believed that if the wild hunt passed by your home, it was a sign that you would be blessed in the coming year. But if you did not properly honor the spirits, you risked misfortune. The connection between Yule and the supernatural also extended to the concept of the Yuletide, or midwinter, a time when people would make offerings to the spirits of the land in order to ensure a good harvest and a prosperous year. The Christmas star, often depicted as a guiding light shining in the night sky, holds deep symbolic meaning not only within the context of the nativity story, but also in broader cultural and mythological traditions. In the Christian tradition, the star is most famously associated with the Star of Bethlehem, which is said to have guided the three wise men to the birthplace of Jesus. The image of this radiant star, marking the birth of Christ, has been a source of inspiration for countless generations, representing hope, divine intervention, and fulfillment of prophecies. However, the symbolism of the Christmas star extends beyond its religious context and has roots in a variety of ancient traditions that celebrate the celestial and spiritual forces at work during the winter season. The Star of Bethlehem, as described in the Gospel of Matthew, is one of the central motifs of the Christian Christmas narrative. It is said that the star appeared in the sky at the time of Jesus' birth, acting as a sign to the wise men, or magi, that a king had been born in Judea. The star was not just a celestial event, but a miraculous sign, signaling the arrival of a new era of peace and salvation. For Christians, the star represents a divine light that entered the world to the birth of Christ, illuminating the path to salvation and offering guidance to all who seek it. The star's role as a beacon of hope is central to the message of Christmas, which is one of light triumphing over darkness. This idea of light overcoming darkness is not exclusive to Christianity. Throughout history, stars and celestial bodies have been seen as symbols of divine or supernatural guidance. In many ancient cultures, the stars were believed to be the eyes of the gods, offering wisdom and insight from the heavens. The symbolism of the Christmas star, with its connection to divine guidance, is a reflection of this long-held belief. In various cultures, the winter sky was seen as a portal to the spiritual realm, with the stars serving as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. In this context, the appearance of a bright star or comet was often interpreted as a sign of important events or changes, whether they were the birth of a king, the rise of a new civilization, or the coming of a new era. The idea of the star as a guide is deeply embedded in human history and mythology. The Magi, who followed the Star of Bethlehem to find the newborn Christ, were themselves part of a long tradition of stargazers and astrologers. In ancient Babylon, Persia, and Greece, astrology played a significant role in shaping the understanding of the cosmos. The belief that the movements of the stars and planets could influence events on Earth was central to many ancient cultures. The Magi, often depicted as wise men or kings, were astrologers who interpreted the stars to guide their actions. Their journey to Bethlehem was not just a physical journey, but a spiritual one, led by the guiding light of the star. This journey symbolizes a quest for truth and enlightenment, a theme that resonates with the broader message of Christmas. Beyond its religious significance, The Christmas star also embodies the broader theme of hope. The star shining in the night sky during the darkest time of the year serves as a reminder that even in the midst of darkness, light can emerge. In the northern hemisphere, the Christmas season coincides with the winter solstice, the shortest day and longest night of the year. During this time, the natural world seems to be at its most barren and desolate, with the cold and darkness enveloping the landscape. Yet, it is also during this time that the Christmas star shines the brightest, offering a promise of warmth and renewal. The star becomes a symbol of the triumph of light over darkness, a message that is particularly resonant during the winter months, when people long for the return of the sun and the warmth of spring. In many ways, the Christmas star is a symbol of a human desire for guidance and direction. It represents the search for meaning in a world that often seems chaotic and uncertain. The star's light provides a sense of purpose, offering a clear path in times of confusion and doubt. For the Magi, the star led them to the birthplace of Christ, where they found not only a physical place of refuge, but also spiritual enlightenment. The idea of the star as a guide is particularly poignant during the Christmas season, when people come together to reflect on the themes of faith, love, and hope. The star becomes a beacon, not just for those in search of a Savior, but for all who are searching for peace, understanding, and purpose in their lives. The Christmas star also embodies the idea of divine presence. The star's brilliance and clarity suggest a connection to something greater than the earthly realm. In Christian tradition, the star marks the arrival of Christ, who is seen as a divine incarnation on earth. The star serves as a celestial marker of this event, signaling the moment when heaven and earth intersect. The Christmas star, therefore, symbolizes a divine presence in the world and the idea that God's light is ever present, guiding and watching over humanity. The star's radiance reflects the purity and holiness of the divine, and its presence in the sky is a reminder that no matter how dark the world may seem, the light of God is always shining, offering guidance and hope. The significance of the star also extends beyond religious and spiritual contexts. The Christmas star has become a universal symbol of hope and renewal, one that resonates with people of all cultures and beliefs. Whether in the form of a shining ornament on a Christmas tree, or as a metaphor for the triumph of light over darkness, the star represents the enduring human belief in the possibility of change, growth, and rebirth. It serves as a reminder that, even in the most challenging times, there is always a potential for a new beginning, for the emergence of light from darkness, for the birth of something beautiful and transformative. The star's connection to Christmas is not just a symbol of religious significance, but also a reflection of the deeper, universal themes of the season. The Christmas star shines as a beacon of hope, peace, and love, drawing people together in the spirit of celebration and reflection. It marks the arrival of light in the darkest time of the year, offering a promise of warmth, growth, and renewal. In this sense, the star is a representation of the human spirit's resilience and capacity for renewal, reminding us that no matter how long the night may seem, the light will always return. It invites us to look beyond the darkness and to seek out the light, to follow the path that illuminates, and to find peace, joy, and hope in the journey. As the Christmas star continues to shine brightly in the hearts of those who celebrate the season, it stands as a testament to the enduring power of light and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Santa's helpers, the little elves and magical creatures that have been woven into the fabric of Christmas folklore, play a role that is as essential as the jolly old man himself. These helpers, often depicted as small, industrious beings, work tirelessly in Santa's North Pole workshop, creating toys, organizing gifts, and ensuring that Christmas magic is delivered to homes across the world. While Santa Claus himself is the face of the holiday season, it is these often unseen figures who make the Christmas dream come true, lending a sense of whimsy, magic, and charm to the holiday. The origin of Santa's helpers can be traced back to a variety of European traditions, most notably in the Nordic and Germanic regions, where the belief in elves was deeply rooted in pre-Christian folklore. In these ancient myths, elves were often associated with the natural world, believed to possess magical powers that could influence the seasons, fertility, and even human destiny. Elves, in these early stories, were not necessarily the small, merry figures we now recognize, but rather mystical beings who were capable of both good and mischief. They were guardians of nature, spirits who could either help or hinder human efforts depending on their whims. As time passed and Christmas traditions evolved, These ancient beings morph into the playful, benevolent helpers who work for Santa, embodying the festive spirit of generosity and joy. The modern image of Santa's helpers as elves, small, cheerful, and ever industrious, began to take shape in the 19th century. One of the most significant developments came from the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, commonly known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" by Clement Clarke Moore, published in 1823. In this poem, Moore introduced the image of Santa's sleigh being pulled by reindeer, but it was the idea of Santa's workshop that captured the imagination of many. Although elves were not explicitly mentioned in Moore's poem, the image of Santa as a magical, larger-than-life figure who lived at the North Pole and managed an army of helpers began to take hold in popular culture. The connection between Santa and his helpers became even more solidified in the 19th and 20th centuries with the works of artists like Thomas Nast, whose illustrations in the late 1800s helped shape the modern visual representation of Santa Claus. Nast depicted Santa with a team of jolly little elves, who were always busy making toys and preparing for the grand night of Christmas Eve. This vision of Santa's helpers as hard-working, joyful creatures has persisted in popular culture and has come to represent the essence of the Christmas spirit: dedication, cheer, and the delight of giving. Elves in modern depictions are often portrayed as small in stature, with pointed ears, colorful clothing, and a playful, mischievous demeanor. They are often seen working alongside Santa in his North Pole workshop, where they are busy assembling toys, wrapping gifts, and preparing everything needed for the magical journey around the world on Christmas Eve. This image of Santa's helpers has become a staple of Christmas lore, featured in books, films, advertisements, and even on holiday greeting cards. Their role is essential, as they take on the burden of ensuring that everything is ready for Santa's big night. The idea of Santa's helpers as magical beings also plays into broader themes of Christmas magic that captivate children and adults alike. The elves are not merely assistants. They are part of the enchantment that makes Christmas so special. The notion that there are hidden helpers working behind the scenes, creating and preparing the gifts that will bring joy to children all over the world, creates a sense of wonder and excitement. For children, it adds an element of mystery to the holiday, as they imagine that Santa's workshop is bustling with magical activity throughout the year, just waiting for the right moment to deliver the presents. Beyond the North Pole workshop, elves have also come to play a significant role in other aspects of Christmas traditions. The popular image of the elf on the shelf, a mischievous little character who observes children's behavior throughout the holiday season and reports back to Santa, adds another layer to the mythos of Santa's helpers. The elf on the shelf is a reminder that Santa's magic extends into the everyday, that even when we are not aware, there are forces at work ensuring that the spirit of Christmas is maintained. This modern tradition, which has gained considerable popularity in recent years, emphasizes the idea that Santa's helpers are not just confined to the North Pole, but are active in homes across the world, watching, encouraging, and inspiring festive cheer. The role of Santa's helpers extends beyond mere labor. They are also symbols of the spirit of Christmas itself. Their endless enthusiasm, their devotion to their work, and their playful personalities serve as a reminder of the joy that can be found in giving. Santa's helpers don't work for material rewards. They don't ask for anything in return for their hard work. They work simply because they love the spirit of the holiday season and the happiness that it brings to others. In many ways, the elves embody the idea that the true meaning of Christmas is not about receiving, but about giving. Giving time, effort, and joy to others without expecting anything in return. There's also a deeper lesson in the role of Santa's helpers. In many stories, the elves are shown as working together in harmony, each contributing to the greater good. This cooperative spirit underscores the importance of teamwork, generosity, and community. The image of the busy North Pole workshop, filled with elves working tirelessly to make Christmas magical, represents the idea that the best things in life are often the result of collective effort. Just as the elves work together to bring joy to the world, families, communities, and nations come together during the holiday season to share in the joy of giving and receiving, fostering a sense of unity and connection. In modern culture, the elf has become a symbol of more than just Santa's helpers. It has also become a symbol of childhood innocence and imagination. The dark winter spirits of northern mythology play a fascinating, albeit eerie, role in shaping the cultural landscape of Christmas and winter traditions. These figures, born out of ancient beliefs and often steeped in fear and mystery, have become integral parts of the folklore that surrounds the colder months of the year. From the wild, untamed forces of nature to the creatures that roam the world during the longest nights, these winter spirits embody both the dangers and the mysteries of the season. While much of the Christmas narrative focuses on light, warmth, and joy, the darker aspects of winter mythology remind us that the season is also about survival, the unknown, and the balance between life and death. The Wild Hunt, one of the most significant and ominous elements of northern mythology, is perhaps the most iconic example of winter spirits in the region. This myth, rooted in Germanic and Norse traditions, speaks to the ancient belief that the dark winter months were inhabited by spirits, gods, and mythical figures who traverse the earth in search of souls. The Wild Hunt is typically led by a god or supernatural figure, often Odin, the All-Father in Norse mythology, who rides through the sky with a host of spirits or ghostly hunters. These spectral riders, mounted on their steeds, are said to gallop across the heavens, their appearance marking a time of great change, sometimes heralding both good and bad omens. The Wild Hunt, though a source of fear for those who might encounter it, was also seen as a reminder of the thin boundary between the living and the dead during the winter months. The spirits of the Wild Hunt were believed to be restless souls, some of whom had been wronged in life and were doomed to roam the earth until they had fulfilled their purpose or exacted some form of retribution. For the people of ancient times, the arrival of the Wild Hunt was a reminder of fragility of life and the ever-present threat of death, particularly during the long, dark winter months when survival itself could feel uncertain. In some traditions, it was said that those who witnessed the Wild Hunt were either marked for death or would be swept away by the spirits, lost forever. The image of the Wild Hunt, galloping through the night with the sound of hooves and the howling winds, has left an indelible mark on the collective imagination of Northern Europe and has influenced many aspects of winter folklore, including later depictions of ghosts and supernatural beings. In addition to the Wild Hunt, many Northern European cultures also believed in other malevolent winter spirits, some of whom were said to be connected to the land itself. In the Scandinavian region, for example, there were numerous figures who were associated with the harshness of winter, spirits that brought misfortune, illness, and death. These beings were often depicted as cold and malevolent, embodying the forces of nature that could overwhelm and defeat humanity if not respected or appeased. These spirits were often seen as guardians of the wilderness, embodying the untamable aspects of nature that human beings could neither control nor understand. During the long, dark months of winter, when the landscape was covered in snow and the cold could be life-threatening, these winter spirits were reminders that the natural world was indifferent to human suffering. One such figure in Scandinavian folklore is a Nyx, a powerful and terrifying winter spirit believed to bring the cold and snow that covered the land. The Nyx was associated with the night darkness and winter's long nights. It was said that the Nyx would spread coldness wherever she went, blanketing the world in a frigid silence. This spirit was not malicious in the sense of actively seeking to harm people, but rather she embodied the dangers of nature itself, its vastness, its power, and its indifference to human survival. The Nyx, like many other winter spirits, represented the forces beyond human control, forces that could bring both life and death depending on the circumstances. The connection between the winter spirits and the natural world is a common theme in northern folklore. Many of the figures associated with winter, whether they are gods, spirits, or mythical creatures, are connected to the land, the weather, and the changing seasons. These figures were not merely abstract representations of evil or danger, but were deeply entwined with the natural forces that shaped the lives of the people who believed in them. The cold, the snow, the darkness. These were not just external conditions, but were seen as spiritual forces that could either be with humanity or against it. The spirits of winter were both protectors and threats, depending on how people interacted with them. This relationship between humans and the winter spirits also manifested in various rituals and customs designed to appease or ward off these supernatural beings. Offerings, sacrifices, and rituals were common practices in Northern Europe during the winter months, as people sought to ensure that the spirits of winter would not bring harm to their families or communities. The Christmas feast, a tradition cherished around the world, serves as a central part of the holiday celebrations, and it's fascinating to explore how different cultures have developed their own distinctive ways of celebrating the season through food. While Christmas is often associated with festive decorations, gift-giving, and religious observances, the holiday meal has always been a crucial element in bringing people together. The Christmas feast transcends cultural and geographic boundaries, with each tradition offering unique dishes and customs, but all sharing the common purpose of celebrating the holiday spirit, honoring family, and marking the passage of time. In many cultures, the Christmas feast marks the end of the long Advent period, a time of fasting, prayer, and preparation leading up to the arrival of Christmas. The breaking of the fast during the feast is symbolic, representing the joy and abundance that comes with the birth of Christ. For many families, the meal is an expression of love and gratitude, a time when loved ones gather around the table to share not only food but memories, laughter, and warmth. The importance of the meal cannot be overstated, as it serves as a reminder of the central role of community, unity, and togetherness during the holiday season. In Western countries, the Christmas feast typically centers around a large, roasted main dish. The turkey, which has become synonymous with Christmas in many Anglo-Saxon countries, is often the centerpiece of the meal. Roasted perfection, golden brown and fragrant, the turkey is usually accompanied by stuffing, gravy, cranberry sauce, and a variety of vegetables, including Brussels sprouts, carrots, and potatoes. This hearty meal, rich in flavors and textures, brings a sense of comfort and indulgence, offering a welcome respite from the cold, dark winter days. In the United States, the Christmas dinner often includes side dishes that reflect the diverse cultural influences present in the country. From mashed potatoes and green bean casseroles to cornbread and sweet potatoes, the American Christmas feast draws from a rich tapestry of regional and ethnic traditions. The meal, which may also feature ham or roast beef, offers an opportunity to showcase family recipes passed down through generations. Desserts, often the crowning touch of the meal, include pies, pumpkin, apple, and pecan, and cakes, cookies, and gingerbread houses, adding sweetness to the gathering. Across the Atlantic in the United Kingdom, the Christmas feast is similarly built around a roasted main dish, with turkey being the most popular choice, though roast beef or goose are also traditional options. Alongside the meat, British families enjoy stuffing, roasted potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, and an array of vegetables. One of the most beloved accompaniments is the Christmas pudding, a rich, dense dessert made with suet, dried fruit, and spices. It is traditionally steamed for several hours and often served with brandy butter or custard. The tradition of flaming the pudding, where brandy is poured over it and set alight, adds an element of spectacle to the meal, delighting children and adults alike. In many European countries, the Christmas feast takes on unique characteristics shaped by centuries-old customs and regional ingredients. In Italy, for example, Christmas Eve is marked by a special dinner called the Feast of the Seven Fishes, a tradition that highlights the abundance of seafood. The meal features multiple courses, each showcasing a different type of fish or seafood, such as bacala, salted cod, eels, shrimp, and clams, often prepared in a variety of ways, from frying to braising to baking. The Feast of the Seven Fishes reflects the Italian Catholic tradition of abstaining from meat on Christmas Eve and the celebration of fish as a festive, celebratory dish. After the main meal, families indulge in desserts like panettone, a sweet, yeasted bread filled with dried fruits, and torrone, a nougat confection made with almonds or hazelnuts. In Spain, the Christmas meal is an elaborate and festive occasion, with foods that reflect both the country's regional specialties and its rich history of culinary influences. A typical Spanish Christmas feast includes lamb, which is often roasted or braised, as well as seafood, such as prawns, shellfish, and fish. For dessert, Spanish families enjoy turron, a type of nougat made from almonds and honey, and polvorons, crumbly shortbread cookies. In the Catalonia region, a traditional Christmas Eve meal includes cannelons, a pasta dish made with leftover turkey or roast beef, mixed with bechamel sauce and cheese, reflecting the Spanish love for turning leftovers into delicious new dishes. The Spanish Christmas meal is not just about the food, but about the communal aspect of dining, where family members gather together to share in the feast and the joy of the season. In Poland, the Christmas feast is an event steeped in tradition and meaning, especially on Christmas Eve, when families observe Vigilia, a multi-course meal that includes a variety of fish, soups, and vegetables, as well as traditional Polish dishes like pierogi, dumplings filled with various fillings such as sauerkraut, mushrooms, or potatoes, and borscht, a beetroot soup. A key feature of the Wigilia meal is the breaking of the opletek, a thin wafer, which is shared among family members as a sign of peace and goodwill before the meal begins. The meal is traditionally meatless, in keeping with the Catholic custom of fasting before Christmas, and culminates in serving of desserts like macaweek, a poppy seed roll, and compote, a fruit compote made from dried fruits such as prunes, apples, and pears. In Scandinavia, the Christmas feast is another grand occasion, and each country has its own distinctive dishes. In Sweden, the traditional Julbert Christmas table is a lavish spread that includes a variety of cold and hot dishes. The centerpiece is usually a large ham, often glazed with mustard and brown sugar, accompanied by Swedish meatballs, herring in various pickle forms, gravlax, cured salmon, and a variety of cheeses. The traditions surrounding Christmas are deeply interwoven with the themes of joy, renewal, and the coming together of people from all walks of life. Throughout history, various rituals and practices have evolved, each contributing to the magic and wonder of the season. One of the most universally cherished aspects of Christmas is the gift exchange, a custom that has its roots in both religious and cultural traditions. While the act of giving gifts is now a central part of Christmas celebrations around the world, its origins can be traced back to ancient practices, where gifts symbolized more than just material value. They were an expression of goodwill, generosity, and a desire to create lasting bonds among people. The exchange of gifts during Christmas has strong ties to the story of the Magi, or the three wise men, who, according to Christian tradition, brought valuable gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to the newborn Jesus in Bethlehem. These gifts were symbolic, not only of the Magi's reverence for the Christ child, but also of their acknowledgement of his divine nature. The idea of giving gifts to mark a significant occasion, in this case, the birth of Christ, was thus established as an integral part of the Christmas narrative. Over time, this custom evolved into the modern tradition of gift-giving, which has expanded to include not only the exchange between family members and friends, but also charitable giving, as the spirit of Christmas emphasizes generosity and kindness toward others. In addition to the religious significance of gift-giving, there are cultural and historical factors that have shaped the practice. In Europe, particularly in regions influenced by Roman traditions, the winter solstice was a time of feasting and celebration. During this period, the ancient Romans exchanged gifts as a way to celebrate the rebirth of the sun, marking the turning point of the year. The idea behind these early gift exchanges was one of renewal, reflecting the hope for good fortune and prosperity in the coming year. This practice of giving during the winter season blended seamlessly with the Christian observance of Christmas, where the idea of sharing with loved ones and the less fortunate took on both a religious and social dimension. As Christianity spread across Europe, the tradition of gift-giving during Christmas became further ingrained in the fabric of the holiday season. In medieval Europe, particularly in countries such as Germany and France, the feast of St. Nicholas became a focal point for gift exchange. Children would eagerly await the arrival of St. Nicholas, who was believed to bring presents to those who had been good. In some regions, St. Nicholas was accompanied by a more frightening figure, such as Krampus, who would punish those who had been naughty, creating a duality in the tradition that emphasized both reward and consequence. The custom of receiving gifts from St. Nicholas gradually merged with the celebration of Christmas, and over time, the practice of gift-giving became centered around the birth of Christ. In the 19th century, the modern image of Santa Claus began to take shape, influenced by the traditions of St. Nicholas, but also drawing upon other cultural elements, such as the British Father Christmas and the Dutch Sinterklaas. Santa Claus, with his jolly demeanor, red suit, and sleigh pulled by reindeer, became the embodiment of Christmas cheer and the primary figure associated with gift-giving. His role as a benevolent figure who rewards children for their good behavior reinforced the spirit of generosity that defined the season. The idea of Santa Claus bringing gifts to children on Christmas Eve, as immortalized in the poem "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," was popularized in the United States during the 19th century, and soon the tradition of gift-giving on Christmas Day spread across the globe. The modern Christmas gift exchange is characterized by both its commercial and emotional dimensions. While the commercialization of Christmas has become a significant aspect of the holiday, with retailers offering special sales and promotions, the emotional value of gift-giving has not been lost. Gifts are often seen as expressions of love, appreciation, and thoughtfulness, and the act of selecting a gift for someone carries personal meaning. Whether it's a handmade item, a carefully chosen book, or an item that fulfills a specific need, the gift exchange is a way to show care and consideration for those we hold dear. The joy of seeing a loved one's face light up upon receiving a gift is an integral part of the Christmas experience, and the anticipation of giving and receiving gifts is one of the highlights of the season. In many cultures, the exchange of gifts is also a time to reflect on the importance of family and community. Christmas has long been a time for families to come together, and the act of giving gifts reinforces the bonds between relatives and friends. For many, the holiday season is an opportunity to reconnect with family members, particularly those who may live far away. The gift exchange becomes a way to express affection and gratitude, and it strengthens the sense of togetherness that defines the Christmas spirit. This communal aspect of gift-giving is especially prominent in cultures where the holiday is celebrated with large family gatherings and festive meals. Another important aspect of gift-giving during Christmas is the tradition of charitable donations. The idea of giving to those less fortunate is a central theme in Christian teachings, and has become a core element of Christmas celebrations in many parts of the world. The act of sharing with those in need reflects the values of compassion, kindness, and generosity that are at the heart of the holiday season. Many people use Christmas as an opportunity to contribute to charitable organizations, whether by donating money, food, or gifts. This tradition of charitable giving has grown over the years, with programs such as toy drives, food banks, and fundraisers becoming more common during the holiday season. The Christmas spirit, in this sense, extends beyond the immediate family and community, reaching out to those who may not have the resources to celebrate in the same way. In some cultures, the emphasis on charitable giving is particularly strong. For example, in Italy, there is a long-standing tradition of La Befana, a figure similar to Santa Claus who delivers gifts to children on Epiphany, but she is also associated with giving to the poor. The custom of La Befana is rooted in the idea of helping those in need and ensuring that everyone has something to celebrate during the Christmas season. Similarly, in the United Kingdom, the tradition of Boxing Day, which takes place the day after Christmas, is a time when gifts are given to servants, workers, and the less fortunate. These acts of generosity during the holiday season reflect a broader understanding of Christmas as a time not just for family, but for community care and compassion. As the tradition of gift-giving has evolved over time, so too has the way gifts are exchanged. The rise of online shopping and global commerce has made it easier for people to send gifts to loved ones across the world, breaking down geographical barriers and making the gift exchange more accessible. The convenience of purchasing gifts online has also allowed people to focus more on the thoughtfulness behind the gift rather than the stress of finding the perfect present. However, the deeper meaning behind the exchange of gifts remains unchanged. It is an act of love, kindness, and goodwill that transcends materialism. In recent years, there has also been a shift toward more experiential gifts, where people opt to give experiences rather than physical items. This trend reflects a growing desire for shared memories and meaningful connections, rather than accumulating material possessions. Whether it's tickets to a concert, a weekend getaway, or a cooking class, experiential gifts emphasize the importance of time spent together and the creation of lasting memories. This shift towards experiences rather than physical objects aligns with the evolving understanding of Christmas as a time to connect with others, not just in material gifts, but through shared moments of joy and celebration. The act of giving and receiving gifts during Christmas carries with the timeless themes of generosity, love, and community. These values have been at the heart of the holiday for centuries and continue to resonate in today's world. While the ways in which gifts are exchanged may have changed over time, the emotional significance remains as strong as ever. Christmas is a time to celebrate the bonds that unite us, to reflect on the blessings of the past year, and look forward to the future with hope and gratitude. The tradition of gift-giving serves as a reminder that, at its core, Christmas is about more than just the exchange of material goods. It is about sharing love, kindness, and the joy of giving. The figure of Santa Claus, with his iconic red suit, white beard, and merry demeanor, is one of the most universally recognized symbols of the Christmas season. His image, shaped over centuries by a blend of folklore, myth, and modern advertising, has become synonymous with the holiday spirit, embodying the joy of giving, the warmth of family, and the magic that envelopes the world during the Christmas season. However, to truly understand the significance of Santa Claus and how he became such a prominent figure in the modern celebration of Christmas, it is important to explore his origins, evolution, and the cultural impact he has had across the world. The roots of Santa Claus can be traced back to the historical figure of Saint Nicholas, a Christian bishop who lived in the 4th century in the city of Myra, in what is now Turkey. Saint Nicholas was known for his generosity and kindness, particularly toward children and the poor. Numerous legends surround his life, with one of the most famous stories being about how he secretly provided dowries for 3 poor girls to prevent them from being sold into slavery. Over time, his reputation for charity and miracles grew, and he became the patron saint of children, sailors, and many other groups. His feast day, December 6th, was widely celebrated across Europe, particularly in regions like the Netherlands, where Saint Nicholas was depicted as a jolly, bearded man who rewarded good behavior with gifts. The figure of Saint Nicholas eventually transformed into the character of Santa Claus, particularly in the United States, where Dutch settlers in New York brought their own traditions of Sinterklaas, the Dutch name for Saint Nicholas. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the image of Sinterklaas began to take on a more jovial, approachable form, influenced by various European traditions, including the British Father Christmas. The modern version of Santa Claus, as a larger-than-life figure who travels around the world delivering gifts to children on Christmas Eve, was popularized in the 19th century, largely due to the work of writers and artists who helped shape his image. One of the most significant contributors to the development of Santa Claus' modern image was the publication of Clement Clarke Moore's 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, more commonly known as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." In this poem, Moore describes Santa Claus as a jolly old elf with a round belly that shook when he laughed, like a bowl full of jelly. This depiction helped to solidify the image of Santa as a plump, cheerful figure who brought joy to children. The poem also introduced the idea of Santa's sleigh, which was pulled by reindeer, and the tradition of Santa entering homes through the chimney to deliver gifts. The visual image of Santa Claus was further refined in the 19th century by the American illustrator Thomas Nast, whose illustrations for Harper's Weekly from the 1860s to the 1880s shaped many of the key features we associate with Santa today. Nast's Santa Claus was depicted as a robust, bearded man dressed in a red suit trimmed with white fur, wearing a wide belt and a pointed hat, and carrying a sack filled with toys. This image of Santa Claus, with his rosy cheeks and kind demeanor, quickly became the standard for the holiday figure in American culture. However, it was the Coca-Cola Company's advertising campaign in the 1930s that truly cemented Santa Claus as a global icon. In 1931, Coca-Cola hired the artist Haddon Sundblom to create a series of advertisements featuring Santa Claus. Sundblom's depiction of Santa, which showed him enjoying a bottle of Coca-Cola, was widely distributed and became one of the most recognizable images of the holiday season. The advertisements depicted Santa as an approachable, jolly figure with a healthy appetite for both food and drink, reinforcing the image of Christmas as a time of abundance and celebration. Coca-Cola's portrayal of Santa helped standardize his appearance, reinforcing the red suit, white beard, and cheery smile that are now universally associated with the character. The global spread of Santa Claus can also be attributed to the rise of mass media and commercialization in the 20th century. As Christmas became increasingly commercialized, Santa Claus was incorporated into advertisements, films, television shows, and Christmas decorations, making him an even more central figure in the holiday season. Movies like Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, and The Santa Claus, 1994, along with countless animated specials, have further reinforced the myth of Santa as a magical, omniscient figure who brings happiness and gifts to children around the world. Santa's image, while originating in Western cultures, has spread worldwide, and he is now embraced by people of various cultures and religions, often serving as a symbol of the holiday season regardless of its specific religious meaning. Despite his modern-day ubiquity, Santa Claus also embodies deeper cultural values that extend beyond gift-giving. His role as a symbol of generosity, kindness, and goodwill speaks to the universal desire to bring joy to others, particularly during the holiday season. The tradition of Santa Claus encourages people to focus on giving rather than receiving, emphasizing the importance of selflessness and the joy that comes from making others happy. In many ways, Santa Claus represents the idealized spirit of Christmas, a time of hope, compassion, and unity, where the focus is on love and community rather than material wealth. The figure of Santa Claus also plays a role in shaping the collective imagination of children. For many, the belief in Santa Claus is one of the most enchanting aspects of childhood, a time when the magic of the season feels real and tangible. The rituals surrounding Santa's visit, leaving milk and cookies out for him, hanging stockings by the chimney, and anticipating his arrival on Christmas Eve, create a sense of wonder and excitement. The belief in Santa Claus and the stories of his North Pole workshop, reindeer, and magical sleigh give children something to look forward to during the holiday season, reinforcing the importance of imagination and the joy of believing in something extraordinary. As children grow older and begin to understand the true nature of Santa Claus, the figure often evolves in their hearts. While the literal belief in Santa may fade, the deeper meanings associated with him, such as the importance of family, generosity, and the magic of the holiday season, remain. For parents, continuing the tradition of Santa Claus becomes a way of passing down the joy and wonder of Christmas to the next generation. Santa becomes a symbol of the continuity of Christmas traditions, a link between the past and the present, and a reminder of the joy that can be found in celebrating with loved ones. The impact of Santa Claus extends far beyond the holiday season itself. His image is so ingrained in global culture that it has become a symbol of warmth, generosity, and festive cheer. Whether he is found on Christmas cards, in department store displays, or in the hearts of those who embrace the spirit of Christmas, Santa Claus represents the collective joy of the season. He is a figure who transcends boundaries, bringing people together regardless of background or belief, and reminding them to share values of love, kindness, and community. In recent years, there has been a movement to reimagine Santa Claus in ways that reflect contemporary values. Many versions of Santa Claus now reflect diversity, with depictions of Santa as a figure of various ethnicities and backgrounds. This evolution reflects a broader cultural shift toward inclusivity and representation, ensuring that Santa Claus remained a relevant and beloved figure for all people. Whether he is depicted in traditional garb or more modern attire, Santa Claus continues to serve as a symbol of the holiday spirit, reminding people of the importance of kindness, generosity, and the joy of sharing with others. His image, continually evolving yet rooted in tradition, remains one of the most enduring and beloved figures of the Christmas season, representing the timeless magic and wonder that Christmas brings to people of all ages.